morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning for the Cold Climate Heat Pump panel. Perfect. So as you can tell, as we're just starting the call here, we are recording today's session and we'll be sharing this out with all registrants of the event, including you folks on the call this morning. All right, so just before we get started, I wanted to share this map with you. So on the left-hand side, you'll see it's a map showing the different climate zones in BC. So today we're going to be speaking to considerations for cold climate heat pump panel installations. And when we speak about cold climates, we're speaking about zone 6 or higher. So that's the dark blue on the map there, or the purple zone, or the purple areas are the higher zones there. I'm also going to be introducing a success story about a Kiskanak First Nation. So the map on the right-hand side just is there to show you kind of where in BC we're discussing where Kiskanak are located. All right. So good morning, everyone, and thanks again for joining. My name is Jenna Annett. I'm a Built Environment Initiatives Coordinator with the Community Energy Association. I live in the beautiful Kootenays in a city now called Nelson, but for thousands of years has been the traditional homeland of the Sinixt Nation, the Silks Nation, and the Ktunaxa Nation, and is home to the Métis and many diverse Indigenous people. I'm currently calling in from what is now known as Guelph, Ontario. It's the traditional homeland of the Attawandarronk and the it's the Haudenosaunee. So this land is held as treaty lands and territory with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. As part of CEA's commitment to truth and reconciliation, we recognize the importance of amplifying Indigenous climate leadership. And I wanted to start off today's session by sharing a bit about a Kiskanak's retrofit journey. So a Kiskanak, as I just showed in the map on the last slide, is a Ktunaxa community that is near Invermere, BC. Their retrofit journey began in 2008 with the introduction of an energy manager to guide energy planning and sustainability. In 2010, an energy and emissions plan was developed to reduce consumption and emissions within the nation. Between 2013 and 2016, the community engaged with the Energy Conservation Assistance Program, or ECAP, to support with energy saving measures. In 2017, a series of community workshops and hands-on demonstrations in partnership with Think Bright Homes and BC Hydro increased energy literacy for community members and opportunities for feedback from community on priority and needs for housing. And then by 2018, homes received free energy assessments and quick fixes, leading to a 2019 initiative that bundled repairs and retrofits focused on air tightness, insulation, and mechanical systems. And in 2020, a significant milestone was reached with the successful retrofitting of 10 elder homes. And this focused on improving the living conditions of elders by making homes more energy efficient and ensuring the homes were more comfortable, healthy, and sustainable for future generations. At CEA, we're currently finalizing a video focused on a Kiskanak's incredible journey, and we'll be glad to share it with you folks once it's ready to go. All right, so who are we? The Community Energy Association, or CEA. We're a registered charity and nonprofit. We're committed to accelerating bold action by local government and Indigenous communities related to climate and energy. We have an unwavering commitment to our clients to provide services and support on the journey from awareness to plans and through to implementation. So what does that have to do with offering learning opportunities for building professionals like this one? Well, in BC, buildings are the third highest emitters of greenhouse gas emissions. So for us, building better is climate action, and it also ensures that BC residents have access to healthy, safe, and comfortable homes. At CEA, we coordinate and deliver various activities and projects supporting contractor capacity development across BC. So today's webinar was made possible through Building a Legacy North and the Kootenay Clean Energy Transition. So since 2021, the Building a Legacy North initiative, a collaboration between CEA and the Canadian Home Builders Association of Northern BC, supports high performance building through the implementation of the BC Energy Step Code and Zero Carbon Step Code in Northern BC. So Building a Legacy provides training and support for the building industry and local governments around high performance building in cold climates in both new construction and retrofits. The Kootenay Clean Energy Transition, or KCET, is a project that was developed to address shifts happening in the energy efficiency, renewable energy, and home comfort space. So through KCET, CEA helps Kootenay and boundary communities prepare for a more energy efficient and healthy future through training and capacity building sessions like this one. So thanks to the generous support of the organizations you see listed at the bottom of the slide there, we're able to offer this panel discussion for free, delivering insights and expertise from HVAC specialists and northern building professionals. For a full list of upcoming events and webinars focused on high performance building, you can visit our website just at the bottom of the slide there, communityenergy.ca/news-events. All right, we're just going to take a moment here for a quick introduction to the newest member of CEA's team. My colleague Gaetan is going to hop on and just share the news with you folks. Go ahead, Gaetan.
Yeah, so pleased to introduce Terry McConaughey. Many of you have worked with Terry probably in her capacity as the Executive Director of CHBA Northern BC. Terry and I have been working together since 2021, as Jenna mentioned, with the Building a Legacy North initiative. And just yesterday was Terry's first day as Community Energy Association's new employee. She's begun her job as a Northern Initiative Coordinator. So she will be taking the lead on Building a Legacy North and other things that we are doing in the North. So welcome, Terry. So pleased that you can be here. And this is your debut event with CEA.
Thank you very much, Katan. It's great to be here and even better to see so many familiar faces. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks to both of you. And Terry's first weekend, she's hopping on this call to help facilitate today's session. So I'm really grateful to have her here with us today. All right, so today's session, again, is a facilitated discussion with cold climate heat pump experts. So our panelists today are joining us to speak to their experiences and expertise with cold climate heat pump panel installations. And they're joining from across northern areas in BC. So we have Quesnel, Prince George, and Terrace. They'll be sharing their practical experiences during this webinar about installing, maintaining, and optimizing heat pumps in cold climates. If you have any questions for the panelists as we go through, feel free to pop them in the chat and we'll do our best to kind of ask the questions to the panelists on your behalf. We'll also try to save some time at the end for the questions too. We'll see how discussions go with the panelists. And just a small request, as this session is geared towards folks joining from cold climates, so the zone 6 or higher is shown kind of in that map at the beginning. We'd like to request that questions come from folks joining from those regions as well. So if that's you, feel free to put your questions right in the chat and we'll do our best to forward them towards the panelists. All right, so, and I should mention that after the panel discussions, we're also going to have a bonus presentation from Fortis BC. So they'll be joining us at 9:30 to speak to their rebate program. So stick around then to learn all about the rebate programs offered through Fortis BC. And then just quickly before we begin the panel discussion, I just wanted to invite the panelists to introduce themselves. So Rob, you're top of my list. Please introduce yourself and then we'll go through with the other folks.
Okay. Thanks, Jenna. Rob Pope, co-founder and partner of Ecolite and Energy Solutions, focused on Part 9 homes, mechanical systems, energy systems, and so on. I've been in the industry since the mid-70s. You can see by the gray hair, been around for quite a while. I have 3 trades tickets, and so I come from the actual installation contracting side of it before evolving into the consulting side of it. And I am currently just half in, half out. I'm in semi-retirement right now. So I'm in the privileged position of being able to say more things and get away with it than I ever did before.
I didn't know that was holding you back before. Great, thanks, Rob. Ben Thompson from HVAC Strong Mechanical in Prince George. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. Good morning. My name is Ben Thompson. I'm the owner operator of HVAC Strong Mechanical in Prince George. I have been in the HVAC industry for 16 years now. Our main focus in Prince George is heat pump systems of all varieties. It's about 90% of the work that our business does. We were also the first accredited heat pump contractor in Prince George, possibly northern BC. And so it has been, as I said, the main staple of our work for the last 2.5 years since we relocated up here.
Wonderful. Thanks, Ben. Wonderful to have you here. I'm Sean with Village Mechanical and Terrace. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Morning, I'm Sean Kelvington with Village Mechanical. Been in trades industry for about 22, 23 years. I have 3 different trades tickets, and I co-own this business with my wife here in Terrace, BC. Say our primary type of installation is cold climate heat pump, not dual fuel. Basically getting rid of gas furnaces and putting in heat pumps has been the vast majority of our work for the last year or so anyway. Morning, nice to meet you all.
Great, thank you. And Joe Hart joining us from Quesnel Icon Homes.
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, we're custom home builders in Quesnel. We've been in here for about 30 years. And we were slowly, well, we were one of the first certified net zero builders in northern BC. And we've slowly been inching our way into the cold climate heat pump world. Our approach has been to facilitate clients who are interested in it, as opposed to trying to convince people that it's the way to go right now until we have more actual data that we can share with people, and we're starting to go down that path. We've also added a heat pump to our system here at our house. So I've got some firsthand knowledge on how it actually works, and so it's a little easier to talk to people about that sort of thing. And we're just about to start we actually have started the house for our first house that people have, they have the option for gas, but they don't want gas. They want to go full on heat pump. And so it's created some new challenges for us because of where it is. And we've just found out about a month ago that we're going to receive the first 320 amp service in northern BC for that project. So I'm excited about where this is all going.
Wonderful, thank you. And last but not least, we have Darcy with Salix Energy Advising in Prince George. Darcy, could you introduce yourself?
Yep. Good morning, everybody. My name is Darcy Michael. I am the owner-operator of Salix Energy Advising. I do energy evaluations in the Prince George, Quesnel, sort of 2 hours or anywhere in any direction around Prince George. I've been doing energy advising for about 3 years, so I did a lot of the Canada Greener Homes rebate program, getting people connected to upgrades on their home, and lots of heat pumps, lots of dual fuel heat pumps, and a few people that are going all electric. Yeah, looking forward to hearing what everybody has to say.
Wonderful, thanks. All right, well, thanks, panelists, for joining us this morning. We have a range of different kind of experiences and expertise, and I'm excited to hear from all of you. So we'll jump right in. We're just going to begin with some questions for Rob Hope, our HVAC specialist from Ecolite and Energy Solutions. So hi, Rob. Thanks again for joining us. Good morning. So just to start, just kind of focusing in on some cold climate technology advancements. Can you let us know kind of an overview of the latest advancements in heat pump technology specifically designed for cold climates, and maybe how these innovations impact performance and efficiency?
Well, I think generally speaking, and I think it's best to keep it general, cold climate heat pumps use variable refrigerant flow technology, VRF technology. So it's compressors that can modulate according to load demand. They also have integrated things like vapor injection into the refrigerant circuit. So as you can see, this is pretty technical stuff. the point is that
Sorry to interrupt, Rob. Could you just speak up a little bit there? We just had a request in the chat.
Can you hear me better now?
It's a little bit better. Thank you.
Just a little bit. Okay. I'll try speak louder and slower. So the technology's been there for quite a while. The adoption of the technology in the market has been slow over the last, say, 10 years, particularly 5 years. We've seen an awful lot of it. The critical difference between the cold climate and the non-cold climate heat pump is the cold climate heat pump is able to maintain its capacity and its efficiency on a reasonably flat line as the temperature outside drops. So just to give context, all heat pumps are rated at a nominal capacity. You might have a 3-ton, 36,000 BTU heat pump. That is third-party tested at about 47 degrees Fahrenheit. But as soon as that temperature drops to 45, 44, and so on, until you get into the cold climates, winter conditions, traditionally, the amount of capacity of that heat pump drops. And it depends on the heat pump, how quickly it drops, but some of them drop quite rapidly until you have nothing left when it comes to your design condition, your typical winter months. Similarly, so does the efficiency, both the capacity and efficiency. So imagine a heat pump comes along and says, okay, we're going to put this new technology in here, and what we're going to do is be able to provide a heat pump that, regardless of that outdoor temperature, within reason, will maintain that nominal capacity. So it's still 3 tons, still 36,000 BTUs at sub-zero temperatures. And it's also just as efficient, or very close to as efficient. And so it's a real game changer. And now in coldest climates in this country, cold climate heat pumps are the better choice. And the good thing about them is, depending on how high performance the home itself is, you can get away with very little backup or so-called emergency heat. In a lot of cases, you can get away without any backup or auxiliary heat. So that's been the game changer.
Great, thank you. All right, glad to hear that kind of technology has come a long way, and we're able to run these systems efficiently in colder climates. Just kind of shifting to system sizing and design. How critical is proper system sizing in cold climates, and what are the key considerations to ensure optimal performance?
Well, it's sizing is critical. It's about as critical as looking out the windshield when you're driving on the highway. You really do need to do your calculations, otherwise you're an amateur. You need to do your homework. You need to know what's the load in this house, how much heat does this house actually need, and then you size from there, and then you go through a process. Once you know the loads, the heating loads and the cooling loads, and you use a proper methodology to do it, which is F280-12, then you can start to select the heat pump that you would like to use in that project. And then you have to look into the specifics of the heat pump. What's its performance curves? What temperature does it maintain its nominal capacity? And when does its capacity drop off? How much does it drop off? And how is how does its efficiency maintain itself throughout that drop in temperature from fall, for example, to winter? You have to look at the specifications of each of equipment, all different. Every single one of them is different. And then, do what's called a balance point calculation. And that'll tell you if you have an appropriate heat pump or not. And there's many brands that are options. So it's not just a few, but even within the catalogs of each brand, there own models will all have different performance curves. And then you got to look at other things like fan curves, make sure the duct is big enough and all that kind of stuff. So there's a process. And if you're a pro and you know what you're doing, that's the process you go through.
Perfect, thanks. And I'll let folks know on the call that we have spent webinars specifically focused on these topics with Rob Pope, and we'll share out a link to our YouTube channel that houses all of those webinar recordings, along with a link to the recording of today's session in an email next week. Perfect. And Rob, you mentioned kind of needing to know the specifications of equipment. Where can folks find that information?
The information is published in several places. One is the manufacturer's own publications. So if you're a contractor, you should have easy access to that. It should be at the tips of your fingers, you know where to get it. You would almost always have access to a portal for the equipment you sell or represent. If not, you can just go just Google it. And what you're looking for is the performance specifications. There's third-party rating agencies. AHRI is one that tests equipment as a third party and keeps a list of the results of that testing, so performance and efficiencies under different conditions and so on. And then there's also an agency called NEEP. It's a US-based agency, and that keeps a library of specifically cold climate heat pumps, NEEP. So another place to go. And then, another good place if you're starting from scratch and you don't know anything, you can always go to Enercan website. It's a good start.
Wonderful, thank you. And then just our final question here is around best practices. So what are the industry best practices for installing heat pumps in regions with colder climates, and how do these differ in installations in milder climates?
Really, the only difference in colder climates is you have to make different accommodations for how far off the ground that heat pump has to be, above the snow condition. You don't want that heat pump buried in snow. So in the lower mainland, for example, you can be a foot off the ground, no problem. It's not going to, you're rarely going to get a snow event that's going to cover the ability of the heat pump to move air. But in colder climates, you can be like we know in Whistler, sometimes depending where you are, you got to be 3 feet above the ground, right? So that's one of the considerations. Other than that, the upfront diligence is the more critical part. That is making sure you're sizing it to a load, a known factor. You're doing a load calculation, and you're selecting a heat pump based on its performance data that matches your performance outcomes, and that the ducting, if it's in a re, is appropriately sized to deliver the air you need. And also in colder climates, as opposed to climate zones 5, 4, for example, in most cases with a cold climate heat pump, you don't need any auxiliary heat. In a colder climate, the auxiliary heat is more likely to be needed, and therefore you need to ensure that the panel is sized appropriately to accommodate that extra heat that you're going to need for auxiliary. That's a very pivotal consideration when you're installing heat pumps in a cold climate. And one last thing, in more in the regional areas of British Columbia, where you don't have quick access to centers like Prince George or the Okanagan, like Kelowna, even places like Vanderhoof, especially when you get further away, the equipment choices become what is closest to you, what's in your neighborhood, right? You want to have local supply and especially support and familiarity. So it's no point, thinking about or specifying a really nice Mitsubishi cold climate heat pump, where in local practice, you know, it's the Daikin that dominates the market. That's what people know. Vice versa. That's just an example. So local availability and manufacturer support of that product is pretty critical.
Great, thank you. And you mentioned having the heat pump high enough for the snow load. How about having something on top to cover?
Yeah, that's a good idea. If you have a shed roof or something like that, that's another way to do it. The point being that in colder climates, you're more likely to get a higher snow level. You got to deal with it one way or another. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for those considerations and insights and expertise. We really appreciate it. I'm going to pass things over to my colleague, Terry, and she's going to continue the facilitated discussion.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Jenna, for getting us around the block. Great work. And Rob, yeah, fantastic information. This is a conversation that has been in hibernation, ready to come out for a little while now, especially when it comes to the higher climate zones. So I'm really, really appreciative to the panelists that are here just to share their and the interest is proven by just the number of people that are here participating. And so I know it's just as valuable. This information is out there from the homeowner perspective also. So I look forward to working on something to deliver something to the general public also. So Ben, and I will be just consulting some of the questions just meant to keep the conversation going. And Jenna and Gaitan, if something comes up that you think is relevant or that I'm missing and not striking while the iron is hot, please jump in, right? We're just gonna, it may get clunky at times, but it's really important just to get the information out and strike while the iron's hot, so to speak. So Ben and Sean, thank you both for joining us. Ben from Prince George, as a reminder, Sean is from Terrace. So just for timing purposes, both of you, there's 4 questions that I have, and really love to give you both an opportunity to answer them. So we'll go one at a time and then give you each an opportunity for your input. That authentic firsthand experience is really invaluable. That's why you're here. It's just according to your experience so far, this is where you're at. So hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, so Ben, if we could start with you, please, if that would be okay.
Sure.
One of the questions is surrounding installation challenges. What are the most common challenges you've encountered during heat pump installation in cold climates? And how do you overcome these challenges to ensure system reliability?
Sure. The majority of our work is based on retrofits rather than new construction. So I feel with that, there is always more challenges, obviously, because you're not designing the system from the beginning. Anytime we do new construction, I'm usually in charge of doing load calculations, duct sizing, all those sorts of things. So the planning is a lot easier. Excuse me. When it comes to retrofits, obviously, we're looking at spatial restraints inside. A lot of the time, if we are switching, just for instance, if we're switching from a furnace to a full electric system, which we have done several times, the air handlers are a lot bigger, they take up more space, etc. So, if your mechanical room is a little more cramped, sometimes it can be a little more challenging to fit everything in there. Also, along with that, air handlers tend to have a higher airflow rating than a furnace itself, just due to the fact that we're sizing it to go with the exact heat pump. And obviously we need a larger tonnage of a heat pump. If we're replacing a furnace, so you have a 70,000 BTU furnace, but your heat load is sizing out for a 5-ton heat pump, we're going to have more airflow coming through that air handler. So a lot of the time, the ducting needs to have a proper evaluation carried out as well. The last thing we want to be doing is putting in a heat pump, a 5-ton heat pump that's moving 1,800, 2,000 CFM, but the ducting is only sized for 3 tons of air, right? So a lot of the time, you know, especially in Prince George, luckily, a lot of the basements and things we work in are unfinished. So we have a lot more access to ducting and things, and we can do or carry out the upgrades that are required in order to allow us to have adequate airflow throughout the home. With that being said, also outdoor units where we're placing the condenser and things, we need to make sure that, as Rob was saying, that, you know, snowfall isn't going to be an issue. Obviously ice buildup, if the unit's running in a defrost situation, we can get ice buildup. So we need to make sure that's taken into account as well. And also just airflow. You know, a lot of people forget that, especially heat pumps, they love airflow. And so if we cut down on that and we restrict the airflow in any capacity, that it is going to have a knock-on effect to efficiency and how the system runs, and possibly the longevity of the system as well. So those are kind of the main things that we look at. You know, I think a lot of the time as well, just one other thing, a big restriction that we have when we have a customer that maybe wants to switch to full electric, when we carry out the heat load calculation for the home, it may be that it's an older home. Like Prince George, we have a lot of older homes. When we're doing retrofits, you know, their heat loss, heat gain calculation might come out, and we can't put in a proprietary heat pump system because we can't get enough heating capacity, right? So that's kind of one of the things also we have to be wary of, and that's why it's really important to do a load calculation for every heat pump install. We don't take on any jobs unless we are carrying out a load calculation, because we want to make sure that the sizing is done correctly from the beginning, and then from there we know which equipment we have to use, and we can look at all the other components that I've just discussed and come up with a plan that is going to allow that system to work effectively.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ben. I think retrofits have got to be the most difficult because you're working with what you have, and you had no participation in how you got there with what you're working with, right? So that's definitely a different skill set. And in my opinion, that's a superior skill set. That's tough.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more challenging, as I said, than a new construction aspect. You know, if you're there from the beginning and you can design it all from the start, it's a lot easier. And as I said, you have more hold over how the system's going to run and how things are going to work. So yeah, retrofit, as I said, it's definitely a trickier process, especially if you're upgrading from gas to full electric. You know, if you're doing a dual fuel system, a lot of the time the heat pump itself is going to be of a smaller capacity because it doesn't have to be 100% of the home's load, because we have that furnace as the backup heat source. So a lot of the time the ducting, you know, is sized correctly. We'll still do any upgrades or changes that we need to. But, you know, as I said, switching to the full electric system is definitely where we have to pay a lot more attention to certain aspects of the install.
So Ben, how do you, questions are coming, how do you calculate your heat loss, heat gain?
So we carry out like all our own heat load calculations. I also work with Darcy as well, on a regular basis. As he said, he does a lot of the energy audits. So with that energy audit, he is also compiling obviously a lot of the information that we require for our load calculations, like the makeup of the building, the insulation, the windows, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, we work closely together. Darcy can also generate load calculations from his energy audit. So if I'm working with him, he can often give us the load calculations from that, which is nice because it removes another step that I then don't have to take care of. But if it's out with an energy audit, say for the Fortis rebates, they don't require an energy audit, but they do require a load calculation. So we would take care of all of that ourselves.
That's awesome. Thank you, Ben. And if we could just pivot over to Sean, and I'll just repeat the question again, Sean, I'm interested for your input. is what are some of the installation challenges that you're using, Sean, out your way, and like what are the most common challenges that you come across and with installing cold climate heat pumps out in your neck of the woods? Beautiful, gorgeous terrace, Stikine area, and how do you overcome these to ensure the system reliability?
Well, I agree with a lot of points that Ben has made. Doing mostly retrofits, I would say poor existing ductwork is one of our largest challenges. There's a lot of homes where they've done additions and the ductwork doesn't even extend to that part of the house. And so getting proper airflow calculations, retrofitting ductwork wherever we can to reduce static pressures. I'd say those are probably our largest challenges around installing in this area, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of ductwork, I think, was installed before there was really any standards, especially with older homes. And I would also the heat load calculations. I think a lot of contractors really underestimate the importance of them. And we use a energy auditor in the area, and the reason that we use him is because at F280, while it does a good job of determining heat loads and heat loss, they also do a blower door test. And we've noticed if you do an F280 without a blower door test, depending on the year of the home and the condition that it's in and the condition of the windows and the doors and all the other stuff, you can end up with quite a different number with or without blower door tests and air leakage in that home. So yeah, figuring out exactly what you need for that particular home is, well, I'd say it's a challenge, but we've hired that part out, so it's not affecting us too much. It's mostly ductwork and changing things so that you know for sure that it's going to work properly once it's installed.
No, thanks, Sean. And I noticed Ben is addressing some of the questions in the chat. Thank you, Ben. And Sean, while I've got you here, if we can move on, thank you for that. Another theme I'm hearing is the real importance of having the that support that was talked about at the very beginning with the ability for installation and maintenance and the different professions that renovators and builders need at hand. So moving forward is performance optimization. What specific steps do you take to optimize the performance of heat pumps during the coldest months? Like, are there any particular maintenance routines that are critical, Sean, in your experience?
Well, with heat pumps, I'd say in terms of what a homeowner can do, your air filter. It's more critical, I would say, than a furnace. Airflow, as Ben had mentioned, is a pretty big deal when it comes to heat pumps, and being able to maintain that's pretty tough with dirty air filters. So checking that as regularly as you can and changing those out when needed, I think, is probably the most important thing. And then during fall, there's a lot of debris and things that fall from trees, and they get pulled into the back of the heat pump, the outdoor unit. So making sure the coils and things are clean on the outside unit is quite important as well, especially once you get into colder months. Yeah, and
that totally makes sense. So that brings up another aspect of for installers, builders, renovators is homeowner, right? Making sure that they have all the information they need to keep their system maintained from their perspective also. So that makes sense. So we'll pop back over to Ben if we could. And Ben, same question, just what specific steps do you take to optimize the performance of heat pumps during the coldest months, or what should be taken? Are there any critical maintenance routines that are critical?
Yeah, I think, excuse me, I think Sean already covered the aspect of maintenance. You know, as I said, heat pumps love airflow. You know, they're based off of airflow. So if you start restricting that, that is usually when we start to get issues. The main kind of thing based on that we tend to do in a lot of our retrofit projects is to try and optimize not only the supply air, but the return. So a lot of the time, what I've found is return air in homes is undersized. Whether that be the amount of grills they have throughout the home, the placement of them, if they're restricted, the type of vents, grill covers they have on there can also be restrictive. So we will take a good assessment and look at that during the estimating process. And if we need to add additional returns or change things out, we'll take care of that. But solely in the mechanical room, we always upsize the return drops. We will upsize it to the biggest ductwork, like off-the-shelf ducting we can get, which is 24 by 10, because a lot of the time they're undersized. And as Sean said, a furnace is a lot more forgiving. Heat pumps are not. And so that is one of the main things why we do that. We also install easement fittings, which if anybody on here has done the accreditation process for rebates, you have to do the TECA principles of moving air course. I've got a big background in ducting, so I'd already, done all of these things anyway, but the POMA course is very informative regarding easement fittings, return air, and how certain fittings restrict the airflow more than others. So that is always good to keep that in mind. So we'll have an easement fitting, we'll have upsize ducting. We increase the filter size, so we'll tend to do 5-inch pleated filters. You've got a bigger surface area. It will allow more airflow as well through the system. We also tend to use, if anyone knows them, a perfect platform, which is basically a base for the unit, which allows the return to tie in on one side, the air to pass through the filter and come through the bottom of the unit. Now, on most air handlers, you have to do a bottom return anyway. But even when we're doing a dual fuel system, if we're loading all the air onto one side of the furnace, most guys will do a return air shoe onto the side. That itself can be restrictive. You're also loading all the air onto one side of the fan, which puts additional stress on the motors and efficiencies and whatnot. So once again, we will put in a base can. We will use the bottom of the furnace, once again, to keep efficiency up, keep airflow up. So there's just different aspects, with maintenance as well as the design process that will help to keep efficiencies up over a longer period of time as well.
Awesome. So I'm mindful of our time schedule here. This is all amazing information. We could probably keep you gentlemen here. I kid you not, for a couple hours just having this this discussion. So I think this next question will be one that's of interest, and it's Ben. While I've got you, we'll start with you, please. Panel upgrades. What factors should be considered when assessing whether a panel upgrade is needed for a cold climate heat pump installation? What is the most common scenario you've encountered with the panel upgrade and installation?
Sure. Obviously, there's different aspects to take into account with that as well. So on a dual fuel scenario, the most of the time we haven't required a panel upgrade or service upgrade, solely because a lot of the time, like older homes here have 100 amp feed. Okay, so rule of thumb, just to break it down for people, you can usually have about 3 main load points on a 100 amp panel. So that usually is stove, dryer, or 2 main ones. Then we can add a heat pump. Okay, that's just a quick rule of thumb. So don't take me for gospel on that. However, if we need to look in a bit deeper, if you ask the customer to go onto their BC Hydro account, they can actually take a report which shows the base load of the home. So that is basically the minimum amount of electricity that the home is using. Now, electricians get taught to carry out a base load calculation. It's based off of square footage of the home rather than the actual usage of the home. So their calculated base load is usually higher than the actual base load of the home. And so a lot of the time when we've done that, we've actually managed to add a heat pump when we originally thought we wouldn't manage to, just because of the difference between the calculated base load and the actual base load. Now that's in a dual fuel application. When we're going full electric, as I said, if we're adding a heat pump and an air handler, usually we're okay because the heat pump is the main load. The air handler just requires a basic, usually a 15 amp feed to power the fan and whatnot. If we're doing a backup heat source, obviously an electric one, we're going to require a much greater load in that instance. And once again, that's going to depend on the sizing of your equipment. So that is when we need to look more in depth as to whether the customer may require to do a panel upgrade or service upgrade, I should say, to give them enough power if they're going to require that electric backup heat source. But also there are other options in which we can use load sharing equipment or EVEMs, whatever you want to call them, which allows us to tie two separate loads into one kind of breaker. So you might tie the range and the heat pump in, or the dryer and the heat pump into the same breaker. But as I said, every scenario is going to be different. So really, it's going to be your best option to have an electrician that you work with all the time. I only have one that I use on all my jobs. He knows our equipment. He can come in, he can have a look if I'm not sure if we can add it or not, and he can then give us recommendations on the best way to move forward in, you know, with regard to the electrical feed that's required.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. I want to give, thank you. I want to give Sean an opportunity just to address the same question, if I may, please. And just as a reminder, what factors should be considered when assessing whether a panel upgrade is needed for a cold climate heat pump installation? So, Sean, please, for your input.
Well, I think Ben covered quite a bit of it there. I think one of the things that should be considered right now is the grants that are available for certain income levels are quite significant. And if you're, say, an ESP1 and you're right on the edge, it'd be well worth getting a panel upgrade done. You wouldn't cost you a whole lot if you're ESP1. And I think it would go a long way for there to be room for future things. If you do have a 100 amp panel and you manage to squeeze a heat pump into it, chances are there's not a lot of room left for anything else. So I think that's not necessarily a challenge, just maybe a consideration around whether or not you should get a panel upgrade, especially with a lot of things changing, a lot of people looking for homes that have EV chargers and things like that. Having that extra space, I think, is pretty important. So I highly recommend panel upgrades. If you're close, or if you only have a 100 amp panel and you need, say, a 3-ton heat pump or larger, chances are it's a pretty good idea. I guess around the challenge part of it, it really comes down to the home. And a lot of the way they used to do things was run the wiring within the wall, and now it has to be run on the outside of the house up through the roof. And so where it is and how that ties into the grid, and I guess those are the challenges. Not something any homeowner really has to be concerned with, but definitely get a proper estimate or a quote from someone, because it can escalate quickly if things are tough for the installation.
Yeah, that makes sense, Sean, especially when I've already got my hot tub wired up. So yeah. Thank you very much. So I think with time, Jenna, can I just get your consensus that we'll move forward with Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we have a ton of questions coming
There's
through
so
the chat
many.
as well. And yeah, we'll do our best to see if we have time at the end to answer them. But thanks everyone for being such an engaged audience and for all of your wonderful questions.
The information is phenomenal. So Joe Hart, Quesnel, another beautiful community rather, and past president of CHBA BC and Northern BC. And yeah, thank you so much for being here, Joe. So we just got a few questions, and I know this is where your expertise lies, is we want to talk about design considerations. So from a builder's perspective, what design elements are crucial when incorporating heat pumps into new construction or retrofits in cold climates?
Yeah, just back to what you were talking about a minute ago. I feel like we could talk the rest of the day just on the
We
questions
could.
that have come in. Oh, yeah, it's awesome. Really, I mean, for us, it's important to talk to the client about what's really important to them. They hear the buzzwords, they hear net zero, they hear, zero carbon, they hear heat pumps, and but lots of times they don't really understand what they're really asking for. So it's really important that they are educated on what it means and what they have to be willing to give up to get their goal. Sometimes it's also I really have a hard time talking to people about heat pumps who have friends because we've had a couple of jobs go sideways because before the project was done, they talked to enough friends that convinced them that heat pumps were garbage that they made us. One case, they actually made us take it out before it was ever commissioned. So education is a big part of it right now, just trying to get to people understand what it is we're doing. And so as far as design considerations, I mean, really the simpler, the better. If people are willing to play with their floor plan a little bit, get rid of a few corners, move some windows, maybe eliminate some windows in certain areas or make them smaller, that they have to be able to work with you. It's the only way you're going to get there. And then the other thing I tell people for the high performance homes is that they have to be willing to go through an integrated design process, which is a process where myself, the client, the designer, mechanical contractor, who else, electrician, with many different people that are involved in it. We sit down at the beginning and we sort of design the home together. And then everybody has their input. Well, I need this and I need that. Energy advisor, sorry, that's the other one that's really important to have involved in it. And then, and sometimes it can be a pretty simple process. It doesn't have to be on my friends who build multi-million-dollar homes down on the coast, they'll have like a 1 or 2 day process to do this. For us, it's more a matter of, we sit for a couple hours, and sometimes it's even over the phone, but we can sort of, everybody gets their input. And we start out with a plan, and right away I send that to an energy advisor to give me a breakdown of that home and is it going to perform the way we want it to. And then once we have that done, then we can get our room by room heat calculations done and then send that to our mechanical contractor who then can come up with a system that actually works. We did a house, we completed it about 2 years ago. It's been through 2 winters now. They had a place that was, they didn't have gas and they were moving it. They wanted us to build right beside their old home on another lot. And so it was a perfect opportunity to build them a net zero house. And we went totally zero carbon with a cold climate heat pump with a backup coil built into it. And the interesting part about it for us was, and the design of the home was dead simple. It was a square box. We just dressed it up on the outside to kind of make it look nice. 2-story home with crawl space, but it was a 6-foot crawl space, so it's almost a basement. So everything radiated nicely up and down. It made everything work really well, and it was really efficient to build. So it was 1,440 square foot home with all the bells and whistles for under $350,000. So it can be done. It doesn't have to be a crazy expensive.
Right now, all of our Lower Mainland friends have just fallen over out of their chairs when you 350,000.
They can't buy the lot for that.
I know.
Yeah, and so it's and so it's really important that so the one we're building right now, it's kind of a lake view, and there were several times where I had to say to the client, what's important? Do you really want to do a net zero house? They want to do the solar panels, the whole thing. I said, is that your goal, or is this view of the lake the goal? Because you can't have both. We have to cut back on certain areas. I'm not talking about getting rid of windows, but sometimes it's just a matter of making windows a little smaller, or beefing up insulation in other areas to make up for it. You also got to be really careful. This is sort of a southwest facing view, and there's a real concern about overheating, which can create a whole nother issue, right? So mechanical design guys like Rob, he actually worked with us on our first net zero house, to sort of help you understand the system and how it works. And then depending on your process, there's a lot of different ways of adding efficiency and insulation to the wall system. And if you're not clear or sure about the way you want to do it, it's really worth the while to hire a building science company, who can then take your design, look at it. They'll give you an analysis of what you should do. We did that on our first home. It was actually my own house. And they gave me some recommendations around what we were doing, just to make sure that it worked properly. Because if you don't do it well, you can really screw it up, and you can end up with creating problems inside your walls that you don't know about until it's too late. Yeah, and then the other part is just the client themselves. They have to understand not only what they're asking for, but how it works. And I think Ben and Darcy touched on that a little bit as well. It's quite amazing how people have that old mindset of, you have a heat pump, doesn't work the same as a furnace, where they run their house at a certain temperature, and then they turn it way down at night, and then they don't work that way. They're kind of low and slow and steady, and so big temperature drops and changes create problems in the house. We had one person that actually just turned it off at night, and so that, and not just it, they turned off the whole system. So now the HRV is not working. None of the system is working, and they had major condensation problems. So it's really important to educate our clients as far as what they're getting and how it works, so that they understand it.
That is going to be a major theme, I think, too. I remember in one of house, same thing. All the windows frosted over. It was an absolute nightmare, and it was determined that they had turned it off when they went away on vacation.
Yeah, they don't work that good.
and then they wanted it torn out. Yeah. So homeowner education. So when you're doing the IDP or the integrated design process, do the homeowners participate in that also?
Yes,
Phil?
absolutely. Yeah, because it's important to know what they want, right? And then the people that actually know how the system works can give them feedback as to, well, if you do this, then it's going to create that, right? And so there can be a lot of issues resolved right away. If you wait too long, you get too far down the rabbit hole, then you end up backing up, or having expensive issues that you got to deal with. And so the more you can do up front, the better, and the more people involved, the better that have impact on what you're doing. It's also
worth the time, isn't it? And
it really is, yeah. And
back.
Exactly. And I found the real challenge, and it's really nice here when talking to Ben and hearing Darcy, there's really very few mechanical contractors in the north who understand heat pumps, who believe in heat pumps. And so what I get is clients saying, oh, well, I talked to a mechanical guy and he said they're garbage, we can't use them. I had a contractor here that we had been using for a while, and we told him we wanted to add a heat pump to a system. And he came back with a disclaimer saying that we'll only do it if your client signs this. And basically it said that we're not responsible when it doesn't work. So those are the kinds of challenges that we're running into with, and so we finally have found somebody locally that knows what they're doing. And the other thing that it does, because they understand the system and they know what they're doing, it's priced accordingly. It doesn't have to be so expensive. I talked to Ben a couple of years ago when I found out that he was kind of the heat pump guru of the North. And we were talking numbers and sort of where we're at. And then I talked to my guys here and they didn't relate at all. It was way more expensive. It was stupid expensive. And of course, Ben won't come to Quesnel, so I was kind of stuck. And,
I see a lot of business taking place here. This is awesome.
yeah, no, exactly. But we finally found somebody, and their numbers are sort of on par with what I talked to Ben about. And so, you know, if they know what they're doing and they've got experience doing it, the prices will tell.
That's awesome, Joe. Yeah, so we talked about the importance of the homeowner. We talked about the importance of having the contractors and all the capacity there for all of the new technology. I'm sorry, did somebody else jump in?
Yeah, Ben was.
Sorry. I was just trying to say, to piggyback onto what Joe was saying, up in Prince George, I'm not sure what it's like up in Terrace with Sean, but a lot of contractors here still will not touch heat pumps. And I think the issue that was created originally when the original rebate programs came out quite a while ago, it was pushed a lot, but the equipment wasn't ready. And so that has created a lot of, I think, bad feelings with a lot of contractors where, you know, they still have this aspect in their head of heat pumps don't work, right? Now, like, I'm from Scotland originally. I worked all over Europe. I've worked all over the world. The majority of stuff that we always used was heat pumps. And so it's something I've had a lot of experience with. And a lot of the time, the planning, the installation, the programming, everything all has to come into the one process. And if that is done correctly, as Joe was saying, it'll work fine. Like, there's no issues with it. It's just the fact that guys don't want to do it. And a lot of the time that's because, as I said, they have that bad feeling, or they don't have enough experience with heat pumps. They don't know enough about it, and they just don't want to work with it. Hence why somebody made a contract saying, if it doesn't work, we're not in charge of fixing it or working on it. Probably because they would put it in, but they don't know how it works or how to have it work properly, right? So it's just about having that experience. And if you don't know enough, there are lots of courses out there and lots of people you can speak to in order to learn. It's just putting the effort in to actually get that information for yourself, right?
Thank you, Ben, for jumping in on that, and to you, Joe, also, because this is a really good segue into the next one and our last presenter. Before we open it up for questions, there's a ton of questions. Joe, is there anything else you wanted to close up on?
I just want to say that so our process, as I said in my introduction, has been we facilitate people who are interested in doing it. We haven't been trying to push it because we felt like we needed to get actual units working in our area so that we can tell people, yeah, it does work and here's how it works. And so that one I just told you about, they've been through 2 winters now, and they just rave about their system. Their utility cost is half of what it was in their old house. Now that's partly to do with the fact that it's a much more efficient house, but the heat pump, works really well. The backup coil does hardly ever come on. There's just not that big of a heat change in the house. And so, we really don't get that cold of weather anymore, it seems like. We also installed a mini split at the clubhouse at our golf course here. I do the maintenance on that building. And last winter, we had a little gas furnace in there and then a mini split with a couple of heads. And it's about a 2,000 square foot sort of open building. And I woke up one morning and it was minus 26 and I'd forgotten to turn the gas furnace on because it'd been such a mild fall. And I thought, oh shit, everything's going to be frozen and troubled. And I went down there and it was still pumping heat out. So I was really impressed. At minus 30, it had stopped, but then it started right back up again when it got back down to minus 25, 26. Nice. So I know it does work. And then we added one to our own house, mainly for cooling, but we went with the cold climate heat pump. And our system is a high high velocity furnace. And so it's got a boiler that feeds the furnace. And so our heat pump takes place of the boiler, or takes over from the boiler and does the job up until about minus 22 or 23. And then it's integrated. So it sort of works that the heat pump, as it becomes less efficient, the gas boiler kicks in, and it sort of ramps up slowly as the other goes down. So they kind of work together. It's an integrated system designed to work together. And it works really, really well. And one of the things I've found the most interesting about having this heat system added, or the heat pump system added to our house, is we keep our house a degree cooler now than we used to. And I think, and Ben or Darcy could corroborate this possibly, is because it's constantly moving heat through the system, whereas a furnace system, it comes on, it blows heat, and then the rest of the time it's just moving air. But I think because there's more heat more consistently, the whole house feels more comfortable. And so we don't have to keep the house as warm as we used to. And I feel just as comfortable or more comfortable than we did before. And so, yeah, that is it's been an interesting journey for sure. And it's just really nice to see people that are actually, that understand the system and have the knowledge to sort of move it forward.
Joe, we could talk to you for 2 hours and just
Yeah, I
talk
know. I gotta
about
shut
your
up now.
experience. Like seriously, yeah, I know it's good. So we will move on just in the for time. We really want to leave some question and answer time closer to the end. So you mentioned, Joe, I think everybody's mentioned the importance of using an energy advisor. So we're really grateful that we have Darcy here on our panel. And Darcy, thank you. Welcome from hometown, beautiful Prince George. Yeah, so Darcy, a question I have for you is like role in energy efficiency strategy. I feel like this has been touched on, but how do heat pumps fit into broader energy efficiency strategies for homes in cold climates? As in, like, what other systems or practices should be considered alongside heat pump installations?
Awesome. Thanks, Terry.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So I think heat pumps, I mean, I work with a lot of clients that are looking into like mostly just replacing their furnace. Their furnace is up for renewal. They've heard about heat pumps and they're interested in trying them out or whatever, especially with the large variation in temperatures that we're seeing now, right? So like very hot in the summer. And so people are interested in the cooling aspect of it. And then want to know more about heat pumps, which I think are an excellent addition. I strongly recommend people to do an energy evaluation. Especially if people are thinking about going all electric. If you're going to go all electric, then you don't want any gaps in your envelope. So I think this leads into some of the negative experiences people have had with heat pumps. Is that if you have an older home that has like older windows or uninsulated portion of the basement, like so if you can see concrete, or insulation in the attic that hasn't been upgraded, those things can drastically increase your heating load calculation. So the heat design load, so how much heat the house is going to need, and then the heat pump needs to make up for that. And then and if it's very cold and then you have the auxiliary heat, right, it really draws on the electricity and drives the bills up quite a bit. So an energy evaluation will help you identify if you have any of those gaps. Like it'll, when I do an evaluation, I give a renovation upgrade report saying, the biggest gap in your building is the uninsulated basement, or you have really old windows, or that kind of thing. Most homeowners know, right? Like, I have leaky windows, or have these other things that aren't perfect with my house. But with modeling the house, you can really identify like the biggest loss. And for example, a lot of people don't think about the uninsulated basement. I've done quite a few houses where they want to do new windows, and then I come in and say like, oh yeah, windows are older, but the number one loss is your uninsulated basement. That would be, and it's probably cheaper than replacing all the windows in your house. Yeah, so
Darcy, I heard somebody say once, I can't remember who it was, but they said if you have like, being like the house is a system, and if you don't have a good strong envelope and you pop a heat pump in there, it's like putting a heat pump in a cheese grater,
mhm,
right? It's just,
yeah,
yeah, too many holes.
yeah, yeah. No. Um,
While we're on that part, incentives and rebates, Darcy, do you have an overview on current incentives and rebates available for contractors and homeowners for installing
yeah,
heat pumps in cold climates? That would be really great information to kind of, before we go into the Q&A.
yeah, yeah. So the one that I'm called like, so with an energy evaluation, you can access the interest-free loan through the Canada Greener Homes program. There's no more rebates through the Canada Greener Homes program, but you can still access the interest-free loan to do upgrades on windows, heat pumps, solar. There's a long list of different upgrades that qualify for that. Um, and and then there's a lot of funds for heat pumps through a Better Homes BC, and a bunch of other ones there. Yes, so yeah, there looks like there's going to be a list of all the programs that I'm talking about shared out, which is yeah, I recommend people checking them out. They can get quite complicated. There's the income qualified programs. There's 3 different levels with that. And then there's lots of different top ups and that kind of thing. There's the Fortis. But yeah, it gets quite, it can be quite convoluted for, because there's the three income levels, but they are quite generous. Most of them are sort of $10,000 and over. There's quite a yeah, there's quite a bit of money right now for heat pumps. And yeah, and then a lot, and both of them, and they combine as well. So you can get the interest-free loan, as well as the rebates through the province or Fortis. So a typical new furnace dual fuel system is 20 to 25 around, and then you get, 10 to 15 from Better Homes BC, just depending on what program you qualify for, and then you can put the rest on the interest-free loan through the Canada Greener Homes program.
Oh, and I guess the PNG just has some incentives also,
Yeah.
for haven't they, Darcy? Yeah, thanks, Angel.
Yep.
Darcy, can you speak to kind of the requirements for contractors whose clients wanting to access these rebate programs specifically through Clean BC?
Yes, I mean, I think Ben and Sean would probably be better able to talk to them. I from my perspective, they need to be registered as a qualified contractor. So you want to go to the Better Homes BC website and look up what contractors in your area are registered. But that's sort of the extent of my knowledge.
Yeah, I can answer that if you'd like. So basically for every rebate program, you have to use an accredited contractor. Now the accreditation process is carried out through the home builders or home performance network. And so with that, it is based online. You have to register on the portal, and you have to go through specific training that they have detailed in that. So a couple of the things are, you have to have somebody within your business that is like a Red Seal HVAC technician. If you're going to be doing dual fuel systems, obviously you need to have a gas fitter. They will ask you to carry out their online training, which is just a video that you have to work your way through and answer questions. And then they will also specify that you have to carry out 2 TECA courses. So one of those is the TECA heat load calculation course, which is F280 approved, which all the rebate programs, if you need to submit a heat load calculation, it has to be F280. And they'll also ask you to do the POMA course, as I mentioned earlier, which is Principles of Moving Air. So that's TECA as well as HRAI. I see somebody just put that in the chat as well. So yeah, you have to have that. And then once you've completed that, you are an accredited contractor and you'll be added to all the associated lists. So basically, when you're looking at the criteria for any of the rebate programs, it will say you need to have an accredited contractor. So that's kind of the main thing on that aspect to allow your customers to access all the rebates.
That's
Thanks, Ben.
awesome, Ben. Thank you.
It's a minor clarification. You don't need to use you don't need to, if you want, I mean, I don't know why someone would do this, but if you wanted to use the loan doesn't have you don't have to have a qualified contractor. But to get any of the Better Homes BC ones, you do. So I don't know why you would do that, but
There you go. That's why we're all here in the same space.
And I can just move on to the last question there, Terry.
Absolutely, please.
Yeah, so educating homeowners, so what are the key points I emphasize when educating homeowners about the benefits and potential drawbacks of heat pumps in cold climates? I feel like this is a big role for me because I get a lot of questions about it. And a lot of it is stuff that people have already touched on. Heat pumps do work. They are a really great option, especially if you're interested in reducing your greenhouse gas emissions, or if you're interested in the cooling aspects of it. There's not a lot of down points to it right now, considering all the rebates and that kind of thing. A lot of the things also mentioning that heat pumps, the air is cooler. So I find, I think Ben, went and checked out one of my friends' installs because they thought it wasn't working because the air coming out is at a lower temperature. It's not that heat, that hot that you get from a furnace. So it'll be working, but the furnace will be running and the temperature's fine, but it's just that the air coming out isn't going to be hot. The other thing I emphasize is that is trying to seal up the big losses outside of the heat pump, right? So like if you have old windows or if you have an uninsulated basement or the attic insulation, that kind of thing, really trying to address those as well, especially if someone is thinking about going all electric. Yeah, it just makes it easier. It brings the heat load calculation down. You don't need to have as big of a furnace. You don't need to have as big of a heat pump if you can reduce that the heat design load. And I get a lot of questions about cost as well. So like how much is I think a lot of the sort of advertising for heat pumps is the energy efficiency, which is true, but a lot of people see that translating to reduced cost, and that just isn't necessarily going to be true, especially in a cold climate. I upgraded my windows and I put in a heat pump, and my costs have gone down a little bit, but not a lot. And then if you were going toward to a heat pump system and you had like an older house, like a log house with an uninsulated basement, your costs are probably going to go up, just depending. Yeah, but they are all of the information that, or so all of the stuff and modeling that I do though indicates that heat pumps are quite cost competitive in most situations versus obviously electric resistance, as well as oil or and propane. That's what all of the modeling stuff suggests to me. Yeah, so in those, so people that are a little bit farther off the beaten path, or who have electric resistance or don't have access to natural gas, a heat pump is definitely an option to consider.
Thank you so much, Darcy. I'm going to turn it back over to Jenna. Thank you. Yeah, Joe and Darcy and Ben, and thank you so very much for Sean, of course, and Rob. This could definitely be a half-day conversation, I think. Hey, Jenna, so you might have to have 2.0 perhaps down the line. So I'll push it back over to you if I may, Jenna, just to oversee some of the Q&A that we do have some time for. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Terry. And I echo gratitude towards all of the panelists as well. Thanks so much for sharing all of your insights. And thanks to those panelists included, but also those on the call who have been helping answer some questions in the Q&A. I've tried to keep track of the questions that did not get responded to at all in the Q&A. So do have a look at the question you posted. You might have some great insights from fellow attendees and panelists. As I go into these questions though, we're gonna do a bit of multitasking. We do a feedback poll at the end of our sessions just to gain some insights into kind of what went well, what we could do better for next time. This is my first panel that I've been a part of. Yeah, please give us some feedback, and we will take it into consideration as we build out future learning opportunities. And as we're launching that poll, I'll continue it right until 9:30. So take your time with it. I'm just going to go through the questions as they came through with a specific focus on those that didn't have any responses in the chat. So Rob, this is while you were speaking at the beginning. Someone asked, is it possible to install a heat pump compressor near the ceiling inside of a shop that has a wood stove and use that to heat a nearby dwelling?
Short answer, no, not a good idea. Compressor needs a lot of air. That air is going to be contaminated with whatever's in that space, especially wood smoke. Bad idea. It's possible, you know, there's workarounds and you could manipulate the situation to make it work, but just, I don't know, on the surface of it, I think it's, there's a better ways to do it than that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And we're just going to zip through as many of these as we can. How important is conducting a static air pressure test as part of the heat pump retrofit design methodology?
If you don't do it, you're blind. You don't know what you're doing. You have to, I mean, you have not in the sense that you're not qualified, in the sense that you don't know what you're dealing with. You need to know the capacity of the existing ducting system to determine whether or not the one that you're proposing will actually work. So Great. You do need to do the test. You know, it's just one of those things that 1 in 100 contractors has the equipment to do that kind of testing. It's just, you know, a cultural thing in our industry that we, you know, just don't do. That's not standard. It's more rule of thumb than anything else. But, you know, they do it properly. You do need to test the static pressure drop, measured flows and so on, and see what the capacity of the existing duct system is. And so you can do whatever mitigation you need to adjust it and make it work. There's almost always a way to make it work with a bit of adjusting, adding returns, adding runs, relieving pressure jumps. There's you know, there's ways to make it work, but you have to know your baseline. So you have to measure to start with.
Okay, so very important. Okay, and Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, that's included in the principles of moving air course through TECA. Is that correct?
Well, it will cover ducting design, which will allow you to help with the static pressure and whatnot of the system. You know, when you go to carry out an assessment for doing an estimate for the customer, like there are many different things you need to look at. So like, as I said, blower sizing of the existing system, the static pressures within the existing ducting system, the duct size, like all these sorts of things have to be taken into consideration. So they do cover a lot of that in those courses. And they provide you with a sheet that shows you how to list them all and calculate, you know, the static pressures, the airflows, all these sorts of things. So yes, I agree with excuse me, with Rob on that one. It is very important, because if our static pressures are all over the place, you know, it really is going to affect the efficiency and running of the system as well.
Great, thank you. Thanks. And there's some mention at the beginning. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Someone was jumping in there. Sean, go ahead.
I just wanted to add something to that. I guess more for people that, I guess, the consumer side of things, because I've heard this from a number of people, just based on the last two people talking there about this type of situation. If you get a heat pump contractor that gives you a size of a heat pump or a quote over the phone and does not plan to come to your place to do a proper assessment before they show up and install a heat pump, that's a big red flag, because I get asked about that a lot. You know, can you give us a quote over the phone? No, we have to come out and look at everything. Oh, well, the last guy, you know, they told us it would be this much. My first questions are based on what? So just I think the education piece that everybody was talking about, this is kind of one of those things that consumers should be very careful about. If it's too quick and too easy, it's probably for a reason. So yeah, I just wanted to add that regarding that kind of situation.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Sean. I'm really glad that so many of these discussions are pointing to the importance of right sizing heat pumps. So thank you for that input there. Okay, there was some mention kind of at the beginning about different refrigerants in cold climate heat pumps, and there was a bit of response to this question in the chat, but something that I don't think that was given much attention to was what was around the specific handling and safety measures during installation and maintenance of these refrigerants. So what safety measures are being used in the north was the second kind of question there.
I can answer that one if you'd like.
Go ahead.
So with, you know, the question was regarding the switch to R32 and 454B. Now, I answered the question regarding if it's going to affect efficiencies. Obviously, it shouldn't affect the efficiency of the system. The systems are being, like the condensers and whatnot, are being modified to have different components and whatnot in them that allow the system to run at the same efficiencies, or there might be just a very slight difference. However, they were asking about safety precautions, et cetera, et cetera. Now, R32 is like just mildly more flammable than the current R410 that we use. It really is very, very small. The issue, or not issue, but the flammability of the refrigerant. Now they're asking if we need to have safety precautions and whatnot. Until we are over a certain amount of refrigerant within a system, it is not deemed to be a safety concern. A lot of the time, all the additional things that need to be put into place safety-wise are on commercial projects where there's going to be a large amount of refrigerant where it could deem a problem if there was a leak within an enclosed mechanical space. So a lot of the safety precautions, I did a training course on this, so a lot of the safety precautions are based on that scenario where you're going to require additional exhaust fans and ventilation and whatnot if there are leaks or problems with the system. In a residential aspect, there shouldn't be need for anything additionally to be done to the system apart from your usual, which is an adequate pressure test on the system to make sure it's actually an enclosed tight system, and proper commissioning of the unit. There's no other things you need to do within the mechanical room in order to kind of mitigate any issues that may come from that, because really the amount of refrigerant in that system is really null and void with regards to the flammability of the refrigerant itself.
Great. Okay, thanks, Ben. And that brings us right to 9:30. So I'm glad. Oh, Rob, you were, oh, sorry. No, I got it. You know, my most important job here is keeping us on time. So I'm tempted to see what you had to say there, but we are right at 9:30, and I know folks are hopping off and heading into starting their day at work. So thanks again, panelists, for all of your expertise and insights. I really do appreciate it. Thanks for everyone on the call for being so engaged and asking your questions and answering each other's questions. Thanks for Terry for jumping in on what day 2, day 3, day 1, day 2 to support this panel today. Really appreciate it. We are going to switch things over to Juan Rincon from Fortis BC. He's going to introduce us to the rebates currently available. So Juan, I do believe you should be able to share your screen there, and we'll pass things along.
Jenna and everybody. Good to see
Thanks,
your
Rob.
faces.
You too.
Thank you, Jenna. And thanks for the panelists. Really great information being shared here today. Yes, perfect. So my name is Juan Rincon. I am the program manager for education and outreach here at Fortis. And a little bit about me, I am a professional engineer. I've been doing energy conservation and efficiency for the last 10 years or so, and really happy to have this space to talk to you about some of the rebates that we can offer. There was some comments, I think Sean mentioned it, and Ben and Darcy about, you know, some of the things that we can offer in terms of rebates. The whole idea that we're here for is to kind of like help customers make that jump to their higher efficient options. So today I'll talk about a little bit about the home renovation rebate program, which, you know, encompasses a few things. We have a somewhat recent offer that it was also alluded to in the presentation for dual fuel heating systems, and obviously about the main topic of here today, which is heat pump rebates. So why is heating important in terms of what you look at, and we chatted a little bit about, or the panelists chatted a little bit about the home as a system and the importance of maybe looking at building envelope first. That is kind of like what building science says. You should take a look at your windows and doors first, but you know, everybody's in a different situation. Sometimes you only have budget to change your heating system. So that makes really the biggest impact of energy use in your home. And you know, depending where you are, up to 50% or more of the energy you use at your home is from space heating. Well, big change there. So home rebate programs that we currently have encompass a few things: space heating, such as heat pumps and dual fuel systems, water heating, building envelope. And if you are doing more than one of those at a time, we also have some bonus offers that we can facilitate for customers. So eligibility, there's a list of eligibility criteria that I can point you in our website, but basically you have to be a resident of the unit for 12 months at least. It has to be the main area where you're living. So additions alone are not eligible. And you need to apply within 6 months after you've done the upgrade. At least, ideally, you want to do it right after you've done that. We mostly target single family homes, but also secondary suites are eligible if they have their individual meter. Duplexes, triplexes, and townhomes are also eligible. So basically, the only type of dwelling that wouldn't be eligible is a condo. Okay, so this is the meat of it, right? And there was some mention of this earlier today. We currently have a dual fuel heating system offer. So what that means is if you retrofit whatever system you had at your home with a furnace in combination with a heat pump, with a switchover temperature. So that means that, after it gets to a certain temperature, your furnace would kick in. We have a $10,000 system, a $10,000 rebate for income qualified folks, and indigenous communities. There is a top up of $5,000 more. And for the folks in the north, Clean BC offers a $3,000 top up on top of those as well. There was some discussion about this earlier about the commissioning sheet, which we think is very important to have the right type of equipment, and if the contractor submits that, they're eligible for $100 or $300 rebate. And we also have rebates for the thermostat. We didn't talk a lot about the thermostats today, but depending on how your setup is, it might be a good idea to have a connected thermostat. They do help in terms of scheduling, and don't worry too much about the changes and doing them manually. So a lot of that stuff you can do from your phone. So it's also a good idea to think about that. So here's a couple of examples of the smart thermostats. It's $150 rebate for some of the folks in Kelowna, for instance, and in the Kootenays. There are certain retailers that will have this rebate right off the shelf. So when you go purchase them, they'll be applied immediately. We have a list of those in our page that you can access here. So we'll be sending this presentation later for your information, so you can take a look at those. And then for the heat pumps that we chatted about here today, when it's a ductless mini split or a central ducted heat pump, we have a $2,000 rebate. It's a bit of a typo there. I just noticed. And for a mini split heat pump of smaller sizes, so basically it ranges from $1,200 to $2,000 depending on the size of the equipment that you're gonna install. There is also heat pump water heater rebates up to $1,000. And we talked a little bit about the requirements for the heat pump installation and the dual fuel system, the HPC and certifications needed for the contractor. So make sure, and there is also a licensed contractor with GST, with a GST number that needs to be hired for this type of renovation. So always look out for that and make sure that your contractor is certified. Just quickly touching base here, we saw that in the poll that there's some people interested in rebates. So like I mentioned before, we always think that the best approach is look at the envelope first. We do have rebates for insulation of different forms. I'm not going too much into that here today because that's not the topic of the day, but I thought I'd mention it. And same thing for windows and doors, up to $2,000 rebates for windows and doors. This is something that I mentioned before. If you do up to two things, so if you change some insulation and you do a dual fuel system, for instance, you get a two upgrade bonus of $300. And for home energy improvement bonus, when you work with a qualified energy advisor and do a pre and post energy evaluation, if you're doing what I would call a big retrofit in your home, you can get up to $2,000 in rebates for those. And lastly, here we talked a little bit about the maintenance. We do have a $50 heat pump service rebate if you wanted to do that in your older system. And we do have a Energy Star appliance rebates for clothes washers and dryers up to $250 and refrigerators up to $100. So that's all I got here. I'm going to share this with you so you can look at the details of each one of the programs separately, and we need to give you some space for questions.
Yeah, thanks, Juan. We did have a couple of questions come through, actually. Greg asks if these rebates are for Fortis natural gas customers or for electric as well?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So for the dual fuel offer, so where we are only, if you're only our gas customer in the north, for instance, or outside of where we're the electric utility, you are eligible for the dual fuel option, which is the one where you pair a heat pump with a furnace rebate. For the electrical appliances only, so like where there is only a heat pump replacement or an appliance replacement, then it's only for the electrical area, and the insulation and windows and doors is for everybody that is our customer. I do have to say that obviously BC Hydro does offer heat pump rebates in their area as well, so you can look into those. So, you're basically covered with either one of us.
Great, thank you. And then do these incentives and rebates, are they for rental units as well, or only for homeowners?
Yeah, it's a good question that we get a lot. And so if all you need basically is your landlord to agree to do that, we have a form that we can use. So they are eligible for rental units as well.
Great. And does the applicant need to be a BC resident?
Does the applicant, like in terms of a citizenship, like, or what? Or like,
So I guess I guess it would be for the rental type situation. So if it's the landlord applying on behalf of a tenant, does the landlord need to be living in BC?
No, not in that case.
Okay. And then I know there was a question about whether these rebates apply to new construction. They do not, but do we have other rebates available for new construction?
Yes, I actually have here our new home program. So we sort of look at this a little bit differently. So obviously houses have to follow the step code. So if you're following that pathway, you can get rebates. If you go beyond the step 3, so step 4 and step 5 are eligible for a rebate. And also the other part is, if you wanted to do like a specific thing in your new construction, you're also eligible for those through our separate pathway. So to answer your question, yes.
Perfect, thank you. And then just one final question here. Is Better Homes still the best website to view all the different available rebates, or should folks go directly to FortisBC's website?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think Darcy was alluding to how complicated sometimes this could be. I like our website, I think, but in terms of an overall picture of the things that you can look at, maybe you could check out the Clean BC as well.
Because I do believe the Clean BC website will list other rebate programs outside of the province.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. All right. Well, thanks, Juan. Thanks so much for sharing that information with us. And again, thanks to everyone on the call for your participation this morning. Thanks again to Terry and the panelists who are still with us. And with that, we're going to close for the morning. We're going to send you off to start and enjoy the rest of your day. So we'll see you,
Jenna.
next time. Thanks, Terry.
Thanks, Darcy. Nice to see you, Greg. Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, everyone.